Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. Yeah, we're back in my kitchen and today's again another video about Norwegian true crime, and this time it's gonna be a triple murder. Yeah, and I think we just simply need to talk about it. On the night of 22nd of May 1999, Orderud Post and her parents, Mary and Christian, were shot and killed in their home on the Orderud estate in Sørum, Akershus. Hiding in the woods until nightfall, the assailant entered the house sometime between midnight and 5 a.m. The intruder moved to the bedroom. He finds there Christian. The man was old and sick, so he could not actually fight the murderer. He was shot cold-bloodedly. Probably awoken by the noise, Mary confronted the intruder and was shot at a close range. Meanwhile, Anne, hearing the noise, also entered the room and was shot and killed in the same manner. The killer leaves the house. The next day, Christian's brother finds 3 dead bodies. This story has so many twists and so many characters, and I hope you're gonna follow along. So listen carefully. I promise this is gonna make at least some kind of sense at the end, although not, well, we'll see. But in order to understand what really happened on that night, who were the suspects and how it all might have happened, we have to move back in time and learn more about 2 people more specifically, about Per Christian and Anna. So let's start with Per Christian. He was born in 1943 and he was making a very successful career. For example, in the 80s, he was working for Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And afterwards, he also managed to move for a while to the United States and work for a Norwegian embassy. So he was a very well-situated man. His wife, her name was Anne, was also a very successful woman. She was working for the Norway's Ministry of Defense, and she was a personal secretary of Norway's Minister of Defense at that time. So both of them were like a power couple, if I can say like that. That's a popular thing, how you call people like that, I guess, nowadays. And so, year 1997, Per Christian and Anne was in this little gathering, like an evening party together with colleagues in their home. So it was already getting late, like around 1:30 a.m. When they decided to go home. The colleagues offered to give them a ride to their home. So it was late, as I said before, and I think considering the institutions and the positions this couple was working for, they might have lived in a decent area, so I guess there wasn't anything to be scared of, like walking in the streets in the late night, I guess. So the colleagues gave them the ride to their home, so they got out of the car and simply moved to the place where they lived. The street was dark, as it is during the night, and nothing suspicious happened, so they were happily walking to their home. And then they noticed that there's just a man walking towards them, approaching them, but they weren't suspicious, they weren't scared. Maybe he was just also walking from some kind of party or taking a late night walk, whoever knows. So, and this man wasn't actually just passing them, he was directly approaching the couple. This man actually was really determined. He approached Per Christian, took him by his tie and just dragged him on the street. He was lying there, and then he started aggressively to hit him, kick him in his body, in his head. And his wife Anna wasn't just standing there panicking, she was actually trying to do something to save her husband. She was hitting him with her purse, as a woman would do in these situations, screaming to let him go. And I guess she was hoping for that man to maybe stop doing what he's doing to her husband. But in fact, that just drew the attention to Anne, and he just stood up, stopped kicking Per Christian, and just punched her in the face. which is like terrible. Why do you hit women? Also, allegedly, there were some people just passing by during the night, and they also stopped and saw what is happening. And this man who was attacking both of them stopped. I guess he was like thinking that he's drawing too much attention to himself, so he stopped and really peacefully and calmly he just started to walk away. He walked a little bit further, then he stopped, then he turned around just to like evaluate the situation, I guess, the damage that he has done. And this gets really creepy right now, because this man decides not to go away or run away as a criminal would do. He comes back. He like slowly moves towards the couple again, stops, looks at them, and then continues to walk away. Slowly, nobody's stopping him, and he just disappears at the end of the street. Here's a question. If there really were some kind of people who saw this, why they weren't helping Per Christian and Anne? Why? And believe me, this is just the beginning of all of the weird stuff that's about to happen in this story. So the police arrives, they take statements from the witnesses, they take also statements from Per Christian and Anne, and both of them say that they don't know this man. They're seeing him for the first time, so they don't recognize him. And most probably from the shock they got, they do not kind of catch all the traits of how he looked, really, you know. But the weirdest thing is about the witnesses. Like, the police allegedly tried to contact them afterwards just to maybe ask some additional questions, but they were like, poof, disappeared. They couldn't trace them. They couldn't reach them on the phone or nothing. They just simply disappeared. So the first thing, maybe they were scared that this man is gonna come after them, or maybe they were involved. We don't know, but anyways, without the witnesses and without Per Christian and Anne recognizing the man, so that they couldn't make any kind of photo robot or whatever they were making during those times, the case was closed. A year passed and it was like 1998 already. It was a normal day of Per Christian and Anne, so they were in a rush in the morning to go to work. They were really in a rush, the time was ticking, but once they approached their car, they noticed something weird about the car. Like, there was something like stuck or put under the car with a black tape. They couldn't figure out what it was. But they decided that, oh my god, they're like really late, they should run to work and we're gonna figure out it a little bit later. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but I guess that was their decision on that moment. Anna arrives at work and she decides to ask one of the drivers of the ministry to just check the car. Maybe he figures out what it is under the car. So he checks, but he cannot really explain what it is, so he advises Anne to call the police. Maybe they can tell her more about this thing, what is there. And the police arrives and they tell Anne that actually the thing that is attached to her car is a 50-gram explosive. Imagine the shock she got, like, with all of this thing, she was driving to work. They were like, the couple was simply speechless from what had happened right now. And after discovering this explosive, this case was given an extremely high priority in Oslo Police Department. But the thing is that Per Christian and Anne couldn't figure out who would like to kill them, who would wish them death, because they didn't have any like real enemies who would be like so angry that they wanted them both to die. But the thing is that later on it appeared that a couple of days before this explosive thing happened, one of Anne's and Per Christian's neighbors noticed a wire that was like leading on their street up to the place where the car is. And he was like checking, what's that wire? You know, it doesn't belong here, but he couldn't figure out, so he just took the wire and put it in a rubbish bin and threw it out. So the police went to their neighborhood to check whether the neighbor is telling the truth. They like searched for the area, also the trash bins, but they couldn't find anything that could like prove what he was saying to them. So this witness wasn't of a big use, and I guess it was discarded. But this is not it. Let's continue. A month passed and Per Christian was calling the police again. It was during the nighttime when Per Christian decided that he wants to go to the bathroom. And once he was going to the bathroom, he felt some kind of weird smell in the house. And he was just following the smell, and it led him to the doorstep, where it became even like stronger and stronger. He decided to look through the peephole to see maybe something's happening in the corridor, but it was like covered, and this freaked him out because then he also started to hear a hissing sound. And then he understood that the hissing sound comes from a gas balloon, and there is some kind of leak coming through the door in their apartment. Per Christian immediately runs to his wife. He wakes her up. They call the police so that they come and figure out what's happening. And they saw this like crazy thing. Like there was a long trail of gasoline leading to their apartment, and apparently the person who did it tried to set fire this line of gasoline so that the fire goes up to their apartment, but I guess this person failed because it didn't light up somehow. I don't know, they were so lucky. And then there was a gas balloon placed by their apartment door in a way that the gas just passes through this small like hole between the doors inside the apartment. So all of this was like seriously planned. The couple was simply devastated and shocked, and there was so much gas in their apartment that the fire department had to evacuate them through their balcony. And needless to say, they weren't feeling safe anymore. It will sound so weird, but they weren't feeling safe in their home country even, which is like one of the safest countries considered in the world. So there was out there a person seriously hunting them, trying to kill them, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't stay at their home as much as possible. They were staying overnight with their friends who accepted them, and they felt like, where should we go? Because unless the police catches somebody who is guilty, they cannot just stay. But I guess on that moment, the destiny was on their side, because Per Christian received an offer to move to the United States and work for a while there as a counselor in the embassy. And of course, they happily accepted this offer, and both of them moved for a year to the United States. But this year passed, and so they returned back to their home country again.
What about the police? Well, allegedly they had some suspects, but they did not have any sufficient evidence, so they could not arrest anyone. In fact, they said that they do not believe that there is any further threat to their lives anymore, so they should just move on with their lives. Not long after returning to Norway, Per was diagnosed with cancer. It was very aggressive, and doctors could not manage to save him. And so, Per Christian passed away in May 1999.
After the funeral, Ann decided to move in with her parents. Her parents was Christian and Marie Orderud. Both of them were elderly people in their 80s, and for whole of their life they've been working in their family-run farm. And in the territory of this farm there was this specific house that was a little bit further from the main building of the farm, and both of these parents of Anne were living in this house that was like a little bit away. So as far as I understand, that's like a specific tradition for family-run farms in Norway, that there is this main farm building where the farmer who manages the farm lives, and after the person who is managing this farm is retiring and all of the management things are given to the younger member who is like taking over the farm duties, the person who retires moves to this house that is like
close to the main building, but not like literally into the farm area. I think it's nice. It also like gives some kind of peace to the people who are retiring from this work. So this is why Anne's parents were living in that house, and this is the house where Anne was moving in. This house for Anne's parents was quite nice. It also had a porch overlooking the woods, so where they could sit and enjoy their evenings and beautiful views and the nature. And not long after the funeral, Anne's uncle from the father's side decided to check on them, on the family, so how they're doing after the funeral. He drives by the house and he knocks at the door, he calls for them, nobody answers. Then he gets a little bit suspicious. Anne's car was parked by the house, so she must be inside, but nobody's answering. Then he thinks, okay, maybe they're just enjoying the beautiful weather outside on the porch overlooking the woods. Maybe they just simply don't hear me because they're sitting outside at the other side of the house. So he goes around the house to the porch, nobody's there, and then he gets really suspicious. He notices that the glass of the back door has been smashed. So he looks into this house through this hole or the glass, and he notices 3 dead bodies on the floor. It's Anne's father, Anne's mother, and Anne herself. This, my friends, is something that is later referred to as the Orderud farm killings. This is a triple murder that has the most craziest story that I have ever read. So bear with me. Again, this is just the beginning. And so the police arrives and investigation is started. So all 3 victims had been shot from a short distance. So basically the person who did this was like really standing by them and doing this. From the bullets they conclude that 2 guns have been used, and therefore they conclude that the people who did this, there were at least like 2 or more. We do not know, but there were 2 guns, so there should be more people. It is believed that father was the first one who was killed in the bedroom because he was sick and he was lying in the bed. Then maybe Anne's mother was running to help her husband. She was shot, and then Anne heard something and she was just coming to see what's happening, and she was also punished with a bullet. And now, like, the most gruesome thing is that the autopsy showed that Anne's mother didn't die immediately. She was just like simply lying there, shot, bleeding out for several hours. And so Anne was living in the basement of this house, and it is believed that she most probably heard the noise and she came up to see what's happening. And then when she saw that her parents had been killed and there are some people with guns inside the house, she was trying to run out through the back door, and she was punished with a shot in her neck. And she just fell there and died. Police concluded that this cannot be a robbery case because all the things were in their place and even the safe wasn't opened and everything was inside. And again, there were no sufficient evidence on the crime scene. The only thing that they had were the bullet shells, from which they can conclude what kind of guns were used. And they also found a half of a footprint of a shoe, and it was like in between the crushed glass from the smashed window of the back door. Later on, they started to kind of search around the territory, like in the woods and everything, and this is where they found a woolen sock. So at first they discarded this woolen sock they found in the woods, but later on they found some fibers that linked the sock to the murder place, and they thought that maybe the murderers actually were wearing woolen socks on their boots so that they do not leave any footprints there, and maybe one of the socks like simply slipped off of the boot, and this is why they found this half of a boot print nearby the doorstep from the backyard. So it kind of makes sense, I guess. But now let's move to another thing. Remember I told you that once the farmer is retiring, one of the family members is taking over the farm. So the question is, who was managing the farm while Anna's parents and Anna were killed there and lived in that house that was a little bit further from the main farmhouse. You see, Anna had a brother. His name was Per, also Per. So in order not to get so confused, I'm gonna just call him brother, so you know. So this brother was managing the farm that was located a little bit farther from the house where Anna and the parents were retiring. Let's look into him. So brother, he was living there in the main house of the farm together with his wife, and her name was Veronica. So basically, he wasn't like a complete manager of the farm. He was like partially managing, because like it wasn't documented that he's like taking over the whole farm, but he surely had a plan to become the main manager of the farm in the future. And of course, both of them were questioned by the police, and they were asked whether they heard any kind of like gunshots or noises that could be linked to this murder on that night. But they of course said they didn't hear anything, because the farmhouse is quite far from that house where the murder took place, which is logic. And actually they found out about these murders on the next day after the murder. They were attending, I guess it was a dog show, and somebody told them there, and they were really shocked. Even there were like witnesses saying that they were so shocked when they got to know about this terrible triple murder. And so a little bit over a week passed, and some like citizen called the police and said that he's hearing in some wood area that somebody is just shooting there. So the police arrives, and it appears that it was just a woman practicing her shooting, and it appears that it was Anne's sister-in-law, and her name was Kristin Kirkemo, and she surely knew how to shoot. This is why the police took her in for interrogation, and soon after this interrogation they figure out that something is not clear with this Kristin, and so they got the warrant and they went to her apartment to search it. Kristin lived together in an apartment with her boyfriend. His name was Lars, and when they searched the apartment, they found that in several places throughout their property there were drugs and guns and even explosives hidden, and also Kristin and her boyfriend Lars were drug addicts. And Lars immediately said, I'm not guilty in any kind of murders or anything related to that triple murder. But then police again started to think about Anne's brother. Remember, the one who was half managing the farm together with his wife Veronica. Police had a suspicion that he also might be linked to this crime. I suggest we look into this Anne's brother pair. And so Anne and her brother Per, that I'm calling just brother not to get confused, both of them had a really nice childhood, very good upbringing, and it appears that from both of them Anne was the most ambitious one, so she soon after decided to have an education and career, so she left the house and started to pursue her dream, which we all know she managed to do because she was really successful. She was working in the government. Her brother stayed in the farm to just help her parents with the daily routines of the farm, of managing it. And then he also decided he also wants to get an education, so he also left the home in order to study law. But then this thing happened, the father got really sick, and this is when the brother decides that he most probably should return back to the farm. So he sacrificed his education in order to help the father to manage the farm. And allegedly, father was beyond grateful that his son is doing this sacrifice for him. And so he said that he sees him as the future manager of the whole farm when he retires. And of course, brother was really happy about that, and he said, yes, I'm gonna do that, I'm ready to do that. And so they agreed that they're gonna make this kind of agreement, like an official document, where they're gonna include a really symbolic sum of money with which the brother is going to kind of buy the farm from his. And so when the brother was 30 already, the father decided that he's gonna retire now and move to the house that's a little bit further from the main building. That's the place where the triple murder took place. And now, the brother was the main manager of the whole farm, as he was dreaming about. And this is when this character named Veronica appears on the stage. She was a veterinarian intern, and she was taking her internship in this farm, like working with the animals, and somehow they managed to fall in love. And this love became very serious, and Veronica and brother, they just got married, and she moved into this main farmhouse, and they started to live together. The mother, of course, approved the relationship. She just wanted her son to be happy, but father didn't like this at all. I mean, maybe he was taking into consideration the background of Veronica. Remember her sister Christine, who was like a drug addict and everything. I don't know what happened, but then one day, like, the brother was just filing some documents for the tax office regarding the farm, and in this line where you have to sign who is the owner, he wrote that he's like a full owner of the farm. And the father, when he saw that, he got really angry, because he said, like, you are not the full owner of the farm. And they had a big argument, and allegedly they didn't talk to each other for a year. I don't know what happened between them, but some kind of like bad environment was around both of these men. And so father went even further with this disagreement. He called his lawyer, and he said that he wants to make amendments in the agreement, the initial agreement that they made between his son and him, like where he was like mentioning that he will give the full ownership of the farm to his son for a symbolic sum of money. Now he changed this sum of money to a big sum of money that was seriously too much for the brother, and he couldn't afford it. And this just made things even worse. And you can imagine how devastated the brother must have felt, because like he gave whole of his life, even like discarded his education for the sake of this farm. And now his father was just like literally spitting in his face and saying that now you're gonna buy this farm for a huge sum of money that you cannot afford. And allegedly I read somewhere that he was doing this also because he changed his mind, and he also wanted to offer a part to Anne, who was now like moved into their house. I don't know like if it's true, but anyways, this situation really looks bad in my opinion. Like, family arguments are so bad, the worst. And now let's move back to Veronica's sister and sister-in-law, Christine. Remember, she was like suspected of being involved in this triple murder in line with her boyfriend named Lars. Later, both of them revealed that they actually sold guns to Anne's brother and his wife Veronica, and that they helped them to plan this triple murder. However, Lars was backing up all the time and saying that yes, he sold the guns, but he wasn't aware about a murder, like he didn't know anything about it. And later on it was like discovered that Lars actually hadn't like very good alibi for that time when the murder took place. And Christine was the one who couldn't remember where she was on the moment when the murder was taking place. But later on she recalled that she was together with her friend, and they both were like delivering newspapers, like working. And when they took the mobile phone of Christine's, the GPS actually proved this to be true, that she was like up and around delivering maybe newspapers, because the GPS showed that she was moving around. And the police acted very smartly. They found this friend with whom she was together. They asked some questions, and as it appeared at the end, Christine wasn't actually together with this friend, but this friend had borrowed Christine's mobile phone. So it looks like actually it was planned, like for this friend have Christine's mobile phone so that she had some kind of alibi that can be proven by GPS. But did the brother and Veronica had an alibi? That's the question. Both of them said that during that night they didn't hear anything, and they were just like simply sleeping in their house. However, some of the neighbors said that it's not true, because the house was really quiet and they didn't even see their cars parked outside the house. Anyhow, at the end of the day, both of the drug addicts, Christine and Lars, and also Anne's brother together with his wife Veronica were charged with a triple murder. Pair Veronica and Kristin received like the highest Norwegian punishment, 21 years in the jail. Lars received 2.5 years, well, he had an alibi. All of the three that received the highest punishment filed for an appeal. And then some new stuff started to come up. It appears that Kristin had actually a bigger relation to the farm than it was believed before. It appears that Kristin, when she was in her 20s, she gave birth to a son. But because she was a real drug addict, the father of this child, he was a boy, didn't allow her to meet the son. But the son was allowed to meet his aunt, which was Kristin's sister Veronica, who lived in the farm together with Anne's brother. This is why Kristin was a frequent guest in the farm, because she wanted to meet her son. This actually kind of indicates, we can assume that they had quite a lot of time to plan things out. It was said that Lars was actually the person who taught Anne's brother how to shoot, and Kristin pointed out to a certain place in the woods where they were actually practicing, and when police came to that place, they actually found a tree that they used as a target for practicing. And the bullet shells actually matched one of the guns that was used in the triple murder. Police also tried to figure out the half shoe print, remember, they found at the murder place, and they tracked it down up to Italy to some kind of shoe convention. Then they traced down up to the Norway where they were selling these shoes, and it appears that two pairs had been sold in the area where Lars was actually living, but unfortunately the people who bought these boots were paying in cash, so they weren't able to trace that person down. I mean, if he had been paying with the card, it would be easier. So again, very smart move if they're guilty. And the police actually also managed to trace down the explosives that at the beginning, remember, were just put under Anne's car. And it appears that these explosives were coming from some kind of criminal entities in Germany, and they were sold back in Norway to Lars. And also the wires that were used for these explosives, they found the same wires in Lars's apartment. So you know, Orderud is a small village and everybody knows everyone. And then there was this witness, this man who just contacted the police and told this story, that on that night when the triple murder took place, he was like waking up during the night by the sound that sounded like a slam of a door. So he just woke up, looked outside the window, and then he saw like a silver car. He couldn't recognize what kind of car it was. It was just standing there by the road. It looked quite suspicious, so he decided just to sit by the window with a cup of tea and look what's gonna happen. And that place was around like 500 meters away from the Orderud farm where this triple murder took place. And then he noticed like a young woman coming back to the car. She just got into the car and went away. And so he told all of this to the police, but they didn't actually consider that as a very solid like eyewitness. But the police didn't really look at him as a reliable witness, I don't know why, until the moment when the mass media published a photo of Kristin. And this is when this witness recognized that that woman who was like getting into that car on that night was actually Kristin. Later on, they started to manipulate with this fact that there were so many photos and stories out there in the media that people might get confused and just believe that they recognize that was her. I don't know, but still it looks suspicious. It could be true. Also, another interesting information came up. It appears that Anne wasn't actually planning to give up the farm to the brother. Her plan was to get the whole farm by herself, sell it, and make some real estate business on that land. So, as we can see, it appears that this wasn't a perfect family. There was a lot of disagreements. So, of course, this looks like a motive for the brother, because now he had an argument with father and also with the sister, and this could be like the reason why he did it, if he did it. And what was the reason for Kristin? Well, let's imagine that the farm is given to Anne and it is sold for real estate and whatever she was planning. And this means that she's gonna lose the only place where she could meet her son when he was given to her sister Veronica, who was living in the farm. Maybe that was her motive. And you might be asking what could be the reason for Veronica to step into this triple murder if she is guilty. Well, one of her ex-boyfriends actually later revealed that Veronica was really into men who had money, like some real background, because she wanted to live a good life. And now maybe she understood that if her husband loses the farm, both of them will be poor and without anything. So maybe this is why she stepped in. In the appeal hearing, the punishment for the brother and his wife remained the same. It was 21 years.
Since they could not prove who exactly pulled the trigger, nobody was charged with murder. All four were found guilty of accessory to murder. It means that they were helping the murder and not necessarily present to it. Something like that.
In January 2015, Lars Orderud and Veronica Orderud were released from the prison after serving more than 14 years of the sentence.
I read somewhere that they moved back to the family farm, which was the scene of the most sensational crimes in Norwegian history. And all of them are now out in the freedom after they have served 2/3 of their respective sentences. Christian was released in 2011 and Lars was released in 2013. From 2006, Per and Veronica Orderud engaged a private investigator, Tore Sandberg, who had previously helped to uncover several murders. They hope he will help to prove them not guilty. On June 22, 2018, the couple again requested that the case be reopened, and the investigator said he has some new evidence.
I read somewhere that in the year 2021 there should be some news regarding this case, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Maybe there wasn't any announcements and any updates regarding that. Anyways, if something appears, I'm gonna keep you updated, because I'm also really interested into knowing what's gonna happen with this couple and if they're still gonna stay as the guilty ones of the case, or something new is gonna appear, because the investigator said that he has some new evidence. I don't know, but in case you see something, any updates, please share them with me, because I couldn't figure out anything. But the question is, what do you think about this terrible case? It's simply mind-blowing. Do you really believe that these guys are guilty? I feel like they are, but that's just my opinion. And so at the end, as always, shoutouts! So I was really amazed by your involvement in the comment section about my previous video that was dedicated to Brigitte Teng's case. And I really love when you're discussing things with me. So the first shout out goes to a person with the nickname King Sola. And wow, this person actually was really close to the place where the second murder took place in Stavanger. Remember the girl Tina, who is believed also to be killed by the man who is now charged with Brigitte Teng's murder. And yeah, he suggested me to look more deeply into Tina's case because there have been some new evidence. So yeah, I might do that very soon. Well, maybe not soon, but I might do that in the future. Apart from that, thank you for watching my videos, and I hope you're gonna stay here for a longer time. The second shout out goes to a person with the nickname Manomania on Earth. Thank you for your comments. And yes, every time when I make these videos, I'm also praying for real closures, and I'm also praying for all of these bad people who do stuff to other people. I want them to be punished for real for what they have done. And yeah, thank you. I also love those nails in my previous video. Today I'm going with this one, springish. What do you think about them? So that being said, I hope you will stay safe. I hope you will stay happy. I hope spring is also coming in the place where you're living right now, and sending you lots of love from Bergen. It's really sunny out there. Have a nice day. See you next time.